So if you're opening an agency or another business, whatever the case is, you would think about where your potential clients would be or customers would be. So you want to start your entrepreneurial journey, but you don't know where to begin and you don't know where to build your business. You can build it in your home country, but COVID situation, everyone's working online. Maybe you have clients outside of your home country. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you are starting your own business and you're trying to figure out where to incorporate and how you can incorporate easily, this video is for you. So big disclaimer, I am not a tax specialist. I'm not a lawyer. I don't speak legalese. And so this video is actually only about my experience and what I had found while doing my research during, and even today, trying to set up companies overseas, outside of Korea and also in the United States. I am a US citizen. However, I am currently living in Thailand. So incorporating a business in the United States while living in Thailand and not flying all the way over there. So my name is Joon. I run an agency and several other businesses around the world. I have incorporated businesses in South Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, the UK, and 2 in the United States. And I'm planning to open another one up. So I've been doing the research lately, seeing if there's any other countries that might be beneficial or really nice and easy to open up. And so I figured I'd make this video as well. So one of the first things you should be thinking about if you're not planning to open a business or incorporate in your own country is why you would incorporate overseas. Now, for me, I first incorporated in South Korea because my original target when I opened my first business, which was a marketing agency, was Koreans in the Korean market. So obviously I needed a Korean business to do that. However, as we've grown, we started closing a lot more clients overseas. And also I've realized that I don't really enjoy working with Korean businesses. I've just had difficult time. And also my Korean's not perfect. So that's probably the biggest issue, I guess. So if you're opening an agency or another business, whatever the case is, you would think about where your potential clients would be or customers would be. If you are selling a lot, if you're drop shipping or you're doing e-com and most of your customers are in the United States, it might help building a company or incorporating a business in the United States. So that's one thing to consider. Another reason you would incorporate overseas or you would look for when you select a country is the ease of creating a business or incorporating. There's a lot of companies or incorporating it in and of itself, and probably in your country as well, may not be as easy as it sounds. And if you're overseas, it's probably going to be more difficult, especially if you're not a citizen of the country you're trying to incorporate in. However, there are countries out there where it's easier to incorporate, but one thing you have to note is that while incorporation might be easy, the banking might be difficult. What I mean by that is creating your company a bank. And especially today where there's travel restrictions and you can't just fly over and start your own business, incorporate, do the documents and all of that, you really want to do a little bit of due diligence before you incorporate, because there are times where I have incorporated overseas and I couldn't get my company bank account created without flying there. And of course, it's COVID, the age of COVID right now, and just everything was a major headache. And when it comes to incorporating overseas, you hear a lot about, or you hear the term offshore, and that is a legitimate reason why people might, or even big corporations might want to incorporate or build satellite offices overseas, is taxation. Tax laws, tax regulations, tax rates. There are tax havens. There are places where the taxes are a lot lower than your home country. However, of course, if you're a US citizen like I am, you need to report your taxes every year, all the time. Doesn't matter where you live. And lastly, incentives. There's a lot of countries out there that want to incentivize and support foreigners building businesses in their country and investing their income or their money in that country. So that is another thing to look out for. So if you've gone through the why and you know that you want to incorporate overseas, you'll be looking into where you might want to incorporate. There's a ton of countries out there where you can. However, you do want to make the best decision you can because you don't want to run into any problems in the future. So one of the easiest places, in my opinion, and one of the places where it might be the safest and most recognizable, of course, is the United States. So I have 2 businesses in the United States, and the setup process relatively easy easy. However, I've done it all from where I am here in Thailand, and I decided to use one of the service providers. And I'll go through some of the service providers that I think are great and would recommend, including the ones that I actually used later in this video. So the United States, creating a LLC or a C-Corp, relatively easy. The process is easy. If you use a service provider, it's even easier. Not everyone watching this video is a US citizen. So if you are not a US citizen, don't worry, you can still open a US company and incorporate in the United States, as well as open a US bank account. However, I believe it might be a little bit more difficult for non-US citizens to create an LLC. I have seen one or two service providers that state on the site that it is possible, but as I am a US citizen, I haven't gone through the process of trying to open a company as a non-US citizen. So definitely do your due diligence and check that out. One of my second businesses that I had open was in Singapore. The Singapore process was really easy. I also use a service provider there. If you need some information about that and the process I went through, let me know, and I will make another quick video about it and talk about my experience there. One of the headaches that I had, I don't think this pertains to everybody, but for me with Singapore, I was opening it during early stages of COVID. I mean, everyone's still pretty much locked down, but I couldn't fly to Singapore to open the bank account. Now, I was able to open it remotely through video call and signing papers on camera. However, with that, most of the banks, at least the major banks in Singapore, they have a minimum deposit requirement. It was $5,000. So that $5,000, I'm not able to touch. I'm not able to remove. I need to keep it in that bank account until the gates open up again and I can fly in and do the bank account process in person, and they will remove that limit. Another business of mine I have open in the United Kingdom. United Kingdom was attractive. The taxes, there are relatively low taxes up until I believe 80,000 pounds or something like that. The other thing was, one of my partners that I'm starting that business with is a UK citizen. So what we did was I gave him a share of the business and he helped me work out all the paperwork and whatnot. Of course, this is a childhood friend. I don't recommend opening businesses with random people. However, there are a lot of co-founders out there. There's a lot of partnerships out there. And if you're opening multiple businesses like I am, it's just not possible to do it all by yourself. And with the UK company, I was able to open a bank remotely. It wasn't an issue. It took maybe a week tops. And so everything was ready to go within a week. And now, right now, I'm actually looking through different countries where I might be able to incorporate one of my other businesses I'm working on. And I've already, I don't know, I just like trying new things. So I've done the US, the UK, Indonesia, Singapore, Korea, and Thailand. But I want to, I forgot to mention that in the beginning of my video. I also have a business in Thailand. But anyway, I want to open maybe Estonia, but I've also looked at Macedonia, Panama, the British Virgin Isles, and Belize, and a few others. Some of the ones that I mentioned, they are complete tax havens, but maybe you want to do a little bit more due diligence and find out about it, because I don't know if it'll look good to have a business over there, but there must be legitimate businesses there. It's not all shady stuff. But anyway, Estonia sounds great because they have some support for digital nomads. I believe they have e-citizenship as well. And from one of my friends that has opened a business in Estonia, that process took a few hours. So I am looking into it. If I do open an Estonian company, I'll make another video and go through the process together, because that would be my first time as well. So I hope that might be interesting for some of you guys. Now, each country has different names or classifications and different types of laws and regulations and taxes for certain corporation type. However, from my experience, most of them fall along the lines of LLC or sole proprietorship, LLC, C-Corp, S-Corp. While the names are a little bit different, and of course the laws, regulations, taxes, and things are a little different, I do find that they work a little bit the same way. For example, in South Korea, I have an LLC. In the United States, I have two LLCs. Now, with it, what is an LLC and what is a C-Corp? Because those are probably the two most used entities to create businesses or for businesses. And you'll see this question come up a lot. You might already have this question if you've been thinking about creating or incorporating a business in the United States. So an LLC, stands for Limited Liability Company, and that's exactly what it is, a limited liability. But I will go into that in a quick second. It is treated or regarded as a separate legal entity. And unlike a sole proprietorship, an LLC is regarded as a separate legal entity, just like a C-Corp. And a C-Corp it's a separate taxable entity. And a C-Corp is also considered a separate legal entity. However, it's also a separate taxable entity that must file corporate tax returns at the corporate level, which is a little different from S-Corps, which I won't go into too much, but they are considered pass-through tax tax entities. And I'm not a specialist in taxes, so you should be doing your due diligence. I'm just going through the experience I had and the types of things that I was searching for while making the decision of incorporating in the United States, the United Kingdom, and a few other countries. And so if you're creating a company in the tech industry, or you are starting a SaaS startup, a software as a service startup, and you're going that route where you're looking for investment, then most of the time, or most people that I know and the things that I've seen, they opt to go for a C-Corp because it's easier, and a C-Corp in Delaware most of the time from my experience, because it's easier to get investment. One of the reasons why a lot of companies or people choose to incorporate in Delaware is because one, the taxes. The other is that they have clearly defined rules, laws, and regulations about business and protection of your business that a lot of investors and a lot of people are somewhat familiar with. One of the things about a C-Corp is that the taxes are a little bit more convoluted, and you could end up becoming double taxed. However, there are benefits to it as well, because C-Corps have one of the lowest tax rates for that first $75,000 of your income, so that's great. And one of the new regulations that have passed that makes C-Corps even more enticing is the Qualified Small Business Stock, QSBC. And what that does is you're eligible, or I mean, if you fit all the requirements, you are eligible to have your tax up to $10 million tax-free or tax-deferred. Again, don't quote me. I'm not a specialist. It's just something I read while I was reading about all this stuff. So I'll drop a link in the description for more information from an actual professional that might be helpful to you should you be thinking about going the route of a C-Corp. Now, if you're thinking of opening an agency like me or some sort of small business, I would recommend going the LLC route, because one of the benefits of having an LLC is, one, you get similar protection like you would at a C-Corp, because it is still a separate legal entity and you have limited liability. So you can only lose the amount of money that you have invested into the business should you ever get sued or face any other issues. But one of the great things about an LLC, and also one of the reasons why I opened the LLC, the Korean equivalent of LLC in South Korea, is that you have more freedom with your cash. What I mean by that is cash distribution, moving around your money is a lot easier, whereas with a C-Corp, there are a lot of things you have to do. You have to make sure everything's in check, and you make one mistake and you have a big headache. I had that issue in Korea, and I ended up closing the C-Corp, the Korean equivalent of a C-Corp, and just reopening a Korean version or Korean equivalent of the LLC. Now, for example, when it comes to your own payments or your own salary, with an LLC, it's called an owner's draw. So whatever money you take out from the business is considered your salary or your pay, and an LLC is disregarded entity. So any money you take out, any of the profit that you use as your own income or however way you move it around, you just have to declare on your 1040. Which, by the way, brings up another point. If you are not a US citizen opening a US business, obviously you need to be reporting taxes now to the United States as well. So if you're from overseas and you're not a US citizen, keep that in mind and do not mess around with the IRS. Now, lastly, I want to go through some of the service providers that help you get started. For me, I prefer using service providers who are professionals and they specialize in this and just make your life easier. For me, that's just easier. If you have a little bit more time on your hands and you enjoy reading about this stuff and going through all the fine print, then it's still definitely possible to open it up on your own. However, the time saved is money earned to me. So anyway, that being said, let me share my screen and we'll go check out. So I have 4 companies open here, service providers, and right now we're looking at Stripe Atlas. Stripe Atlas, of course, most of you guys know Stripe. If you are doing any e-com or online business and you need a payment gateway, Stripe is great. It is, I think, almost the industry standard, and they've been very good. Stripe Atlas is a part of Stripe, and their support has been phenomenal. I know some people might not like them for whatever reasons, but for me, I had no issues. They've answered all of my questions very fast, actually. So I definitely recommend it. It takes a few minutes really to finish all the paperwork, send that in, and then you get a reply within, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 days at most. The only thing is right now with COVID, so if you're watching this today, with COVID going on, supposedly there are delays with the EIN. So you need that EIN, employer identification number, so that you can open a bank account. So keep that in mind. And with this Stripe Atlas, the price point around $500 in setup fees, which is really not much. However, remember, once you open that US legal entity, it opens you up to taxes in the United States. You need to, here we go, run your business. Key ongoing costs. You have the Delaware registered agent, $100 a year, corporate tax preparations, Delaware tax filings, and of course, opening your bank account. Stripe Atlas does not open your bank account for you. However, they do have partners or recommended bank accounts or banks to go with. For me, I am using Mercury Bank. I had used Aslo Bank before, but Aslo had closed down. Now, if you're opening a C-Corp, they might give you a different recommendation. So my banks are based on the fact that I have an LLC. Three others. One is First Base. First Base also, some of my friends had used instead of Stripe Atlas, and they had a great experience. So I just wanted to leave this up there as well. I have not used this one yet, but I did shortlist this out of the many service providers that I have seen. Fairly straightforward, price point's a little lower, and they give you, all the FAQs and the things I'm talking about now you have here. One more, Blook. Blook was also highly recommended by a few other entrepreneurs I know. So you might want to look through this. They show their testimonials. Oh, we're going lower in price as we go. So $300 here to get started, including your EIN and your US bank account. Yeah, and your US bank account. That's nice. Maybe I should look at that. And then one more was Clerky. Clerky is another one. So a lot of my friends have used different, and there's a ton more. There's also local shops or local companies or local firms in Delaware that will help you open up shop as well. There are probably hundreds out there. So these are not the only companies. However, these 4 companies that I am presenting right now as of today are some of the ones with the best reviews that I've seen, and I've been recommended as well during my search and asking other entrepreneurs out there. So Clerky is another one to check out. Anyway, regardless of who you go with, this process is just the start of the journey. There's a lot more to do after that, and whatever you do, please do your due diligence.